Hello and welcome in. Welcome in. As we're all coming in and getting settled, I'd love to know more about who all is joining us today. So we'll get started in just a moment, but as you're coming in, please drop in the chat a little bit of info about your role and what district you're representing and joining us from today. We're going to get started with our session on STEM and CTE with the Iowa Computer Science Incentive Fund in just a moment. But we want to really make the most of our time together. And so to do that, it's really helpful for us to know who all's with us. We'll give just a minute for everybody to filter in, drop a little info in the chat, and then we'll get started. All right, by way of, yes, I'm sorry. By way of introduction on my side, my name is Hope Thompson. I am the Senior Manager of Curriculum and Instruction at NextWave. I'm a former and forever educator myself. I taught elementary science in Baltimore City Public Schools, and I taught in Chicago Public Schools as well. I've also held roles in instruction and curriculum design for students learning robotics as young as pre-K, which I really like to highlight and shout out because as we're thinking about computer science, about STEM, about district level design for these kinds of programs, I really want to make sure that we remember that all students have a place in STEM and STEM has a place in the lives of all of our students, regardless of their grade level or academic needs. So we really want to make sure that we are bringing all the students that we represent to the table when we think about designing programs, especially at a district level. As we're getting started, I'd love to know a little bit about what your approach to computer science looks like right now. With your district's established computer science plan or programs that you are implementing school by school or as a district, where do you find yourself along this spectrum? I understand the numbers here may not represent every single situation or circumstance, but as an estimate, which one sounds the most like your current approach? One being we're interested in integrating computer science more holistically, but we don't yet have a program that is consistent outside of a few select electives or interested teachers or as part of STEM programming. Two being we've started to bring a little more computer science in by having standalone projects. Maybe we're doing Hour of Code, STEM nights. We're bringing a little bit more computer science into conversation alongside engineering, or an after-school robotics club or computer science club. Number three being maybe we have a CS curriculum or a resource, but we are still building buy-in and capacity across the district. We want to make sure that we have educators who are prepared to provide this instruction and that we have fidelity across the district. Or four, we do have year-round in-school computer science happening across different grade levels. We're seeing that for all of our students in school, computer science instruction and practice is happening. So just drop a number in the chat to let us know about where you find yourself along the spectrum of 1 to 4. Great. I'd love to see threes and fours in the chat already. We have some programs that are successful, that are in school, that all students are getting access to. Whether you are joining us today to get a better idea of what opportunities are available to you or to evaluate what your current approaches are. After our time today, we'll have some resources for you to increase that capacity, get you closer to 4 if you're not just there, if you're not there just yet. Or even if you are 1 or 2 on this spectrum, we can help connect you with funding and resources to work your way up to make sure that all students are getting access to computer science instruction. As for who we are at NextWave STEM, we are a curriculum provider who believes that the world needs young innovators. So we offer hands-on courses in emerging tech. We really want our students not just to be consumers of emerging tech, to be users in a passive sense, but to be active creators and designers. And so the most important thing that we can give our students in interactions with emerging technologies are the skills to understand what built them and how we can use them critically. Our goal has always been to empower teachers of today to prepare students for the future, but increasingly, as the world is so rapidly evolving in these areas, these are skills, technologies, tools that students are living and working with already today. And so we have an obligation and a privilege to prepare students to do so effectively and critically in their lives in and out of the classroom. And when we talk to schools about what barriers have prevented them from getting a STEM or computer science program all the way to that level 4, we hear some of the same things over and over again. So I want you to think about your programs. If you're actively at a 4 and you're really happy with your programs, you may be thinking back to getting some of these things started. But if you're anywhere on that 1 to 3, you know well what kind of challenges have prevented you from getting to 4. What has come up time and time again in implementation being more consistent across your school or district. So if you can drop a word or two in the chat for what has been the biggest challenge for implementing computer science at the scale that you'd like to see in your school or district. And we do hear a lot of the same things over and over again. Yeah, I'm seeing a familiar one. Funding comes up a lot. Absolutely. We also hear about staffing. Who is going to be providing this instruction? Whether it's STEM with an engineering focus or a computer science approach where we're doing a lot of programming, we're thinking about that background knowledge, that additional instructional time, where that time is coming from, and who is giving that instruction. How are we making sure that they're building the background knowledge they need to be effective leaders in this concept, not just to be getting through a lesson plan, but also to be a resource to their students, to be able to troubleshoot, to have a depth of knowledge that is useful across the school or across the district? Where is that curriculum coming from as well? We know our teachers are really pressed for time and planning especially. So how are we going to plan around a curriculum we know to be cumulative, to be meaningful, to be hands-on, engaging, replicable, and grounded in standards? Where is all that curriculum and planning time coming from? And then resources, whether that is funding to make these programs happen, to secure this additional staffing, to purchase equipment that is up to date and that students can have meaningful experiences with. Where is that funding coming from as well? We are focused today on two separate sections of these challenges, where they come up. Today, we're going to talk about how the Iowa Computer Science Incentive Fund can help you solve these first two problems around staffing and background knowledge. We're going to talk a little bit about curriculum and resources as well, but we want to connect you with the opportunity to lean on this grant through the fund to address capacity in your school and your district. So if you're not familiar with the Iowa Computer Science Incentive Fund, this is a grant that is in two parts. It has a professional development part and an endorsement part. This is a recurring grant that has been ongoing since 2017, designed to build the capacity of Iowa schools to provide high quality science instruction and also to reimburse endorsements that are sought in computer science or CTE information technology for the middle and high school level. So in these ways, in tandem, we're building both the instruction and the capacity of endorsements across the district. Now, in the fall application window, this is when districts can apply for the fund to secure professional development for educators to expand their knowledge of computer science and their integration into the classroom with some of those concepts, as well as any equipment that is needed to effectively teach computer science or CTE IT in the classroom. If you missed that window back in the fall, it is a recurring fund. We have not received dates for this year, but we anticipate that that window will be opened up again later in the summer. and into the fall. But for the spring application, this is an opportunity for districts to secure reimbursement funds for their teachers that they would like to pursue computer science and IT endorsements. Now, how much does that actually mean can be awarded as a reimbursement? The fund is promising up to $800 per credit for every one of the teachers that is engaging in the endorsement, and up to $500 for textbooks and any associated costs like program fees throughout the programs as well. As for who's eligible, this is going to include public school districts, any accredited non-public schools, and area education agencies. So we're taking a district view when we're thinking through how we can increase capacity, and we want to make sure that we're planning out impact across multiple schools at a time. I want to walk you through the application process. If this is your first interaction with the Iowa Incentive Fund or with grant applications through Iowa Grants, I'm going to go through a little bit of what is included in this process. As far as grants go, having at NextWave STEM, we work with a lot of different grant opportunities and processes. This is a pretty straightforward application. We want to partner with you to help as much as we can to increase this capacity in your schools and get your endorsements across multiple classrooms to represent that depth of computer science knowledge and to bring those really exciting opportunities to students. So as we go through, if you're noticing things that are particularly tricky for your individual district or school, or you could use a little bit of support on, please keep in mind that NextWave is happy to partner with you and help connect you with this process. So the incentive fund application can be found on iowagrants.gov. It is posted as the endorsements section because it is the spring window. So the professional development section has passed in the fall. And all of the application is going to take place here on this site. We're also going to recommend that you keep records elsewhere of all of your application items, all of the different data that you collect for your own record keeping as well. Once you're in this application system, it's going to ask you for your basic district information, who is applying, what counties are affected, some demographic data, and a minority impact statement to start to look at how this potential program and how these endorsements will impact your students. Additionally, the bulk of the application is going to include the narrative. This is broken into 3 sections. The first is the need for the project. And this is where you're going to assess the current computer science reality in your district. What does instruction look like? Is there any computer science instruction? Is there some? Is there consistent computer science instruction? Similar to what we did at the start of our session, really assessing what your breadth of instruction looks like across your schools and your districts when it comes to grade levels, student impact, depth of knowledge, what computer science standards are really being assessed and taught. You're also going to outline how this proposal supports your district's established computer science plan. So how does this relate to goals within your district? And whether you have received previous funding from the Computer Science Incentive Fund in the past. So this is going to be used to help weight your application. If you have no computer science instruction and you have never received any funding from the incentive fund, those are going to count a little bit more towards the strength of your application and the likelihood of your award. But regardless, this is going to give a little bit more context for why there is need for this endorsement, especially in your district. That's also going to include specifics on the endorsements themselves. So what number of educators are going to be seeking that endorsement? What institutions will they be using to get those classes and that instruction? And what is the grade level distribution across K through 12 that teachers are seeking this out? We're also going to include that timeline of the classes so that we can make sure they line up with the timeline of awarded funds for this particular window. And the third section of the narrative is the impact. We're going to measure the number of students impacted in the district who will be receiving instruction or much improved instruction who had not received it before. And we're also going to outline what tools we're going to use, what metrics we're going to use to measure that impact. How will we know the success and the efficacy of this program? We're also going to assess the impact on computer science instruction on the areas that we established and the need for projects. So how does directly link to the issues that made us realize we were a great candidate for this program, that we need this computer science endorsement. We're going to draw that line really specifically for the evaluators. And this is also where we're going to include a copy of your district's established computer science plan so that we can draw those lines as well between this program and the goals that we've set. And then the proposed budget, so the tuition costs, textbook fees, and any other associated fees like technology. We're going to outline all of those as well. Again, this is all happening right in the iowagrants.gov system. It is savable, so you can come back to it as needed, and it's very straightforward for each of these sections. The key dates that you'll want to note is mainly May 31st. This is the application deadline. This is when all of the endorsement items need to be completed by. And the grant implementation cycle will start July 1st through September 30th. Those reimbursement funds will be filed through a claim on iowagrants.gov within a month of the end of the implementation cycle. Now, like I said, there is also that second half of the application for professional development. Now, it's grouped in a fall into spring cycle. So we had the fall cycle for professional development in this year of 2025 into 2026 spring as the endorsement cycle. But this is a recurring fund, like I said, so we have reason to anticipate that there will be additional fund grants open in the fall for professional development if you'd like to engage in that cycle again. And the impact of whether you have received one in the fall is not pursuant to your application in the spring. You do not have to apply for both within 1 year to receive them. Now, the other barrier that we hear from a lot of schools are the curriculum and the resources themselves. So if you do move forward with the application process of getting your teachers endorsed in computer science or 5 through 12 CTE, information technology, you have increased your staffing. You've increased that capacity. You have experts in computer science and the instruction of computer science within your district and your schools. But we also want to make sure that they can use that knowledge. That's something that they can put to use right away without adding to their plate in a way that does not help your district or your schools or your students. We want to make sure that they're not getting more added to their plates to plan and to connect students with all of these technologies through grants and resources that your school may or may not have, your district may or may not have, and have more on their plate so that they're not able to make the most of this knowledge, this endorsement that they've received. Now at NextWave, we do think around these barriers when we are creating curricular resources because just because a teacher has a CS endorsement does not mean that they have more planning time or that they have necessarily more classroom-based resources to create these holistic curricula. And so that's where we come in. If our educators come in with the expertise of how to lead a classroom, the content knowledge of computer science, what we can do is to stay on the cutting edge of these technologies and design courses that are interactive and engaging and high rigor but also provide a structure that can be returned to year after year without having to reinvent the wheel for teachers whose plates are already quite full. Working from the Computer Science Teachers Association, which are aligned with the Iowa Computer Science Standards, we can build out a collection of courses that meet all of those standards and have a really robust computer science program across K through 12. What we don't want to happen is to think about computer science only as something that is an elective that's great if you choose it when you get to high school. We want students to be prepared for it across K through 12 and to be receiving those foundational concepts as early as kindergarten so that they can build that depth of knowledge alongside their educators with those endorsements so that they are prepared upon graduation to seek careers in these categories. So across the very top of this course chart, you're going to see our 7 pathways: robotics, drones, AI literacy, 3D tech, innovation, sustainability, and game design. Now, all of these courses do meet Iowa computer science and technology standards in different capacities. A really particular computer science focus you're going to find in robotics, drones, AI literacy, and game design. Now, there's a lot of our innovation pathway that is going to include some programming and design, our 3D tech as well, our sustainability pathway. All of these different courses work together to meet all those computer science standards so that you can pick and choose depending on how frequently your program meets or how many different courses you're going to get throughout the year. You can put together a holistic program. But I want to show you in particular one pathway just as an example of what NextWave STEM courses look like and what a robust, interactive, rigorous computer science program can look like. And to do that, we're going to look at the robotics pathway. We're just going to follow this pathway from K through 12 as an example. Our youngest students, our kindergartners through second graders, they can begin to think about concepts of algorithms and programming before we ever even introduce a technology. When they think about decomposition and sequencing, this is something that's reflected in their ELA standards as well, whether they can understand the beginning, middle, and end, whether they can break up a task into smaller pieces. That's going to touch on a lot of skills we see elsewhere. But we can also start to introduce a simple technology to also explore the storing of data, the interaction between the user and hardware or software. So with something like this simple mouse robot, students can understand their input and output. They can practice breaking down tasks into smaller pieces, troubleshooting and refining their programs, while also reinforcing other core items like their numeracy, like telling a story. They can practice some other skills while also being dedicated to these computer science standards. I've grabbed just a couple of those computer science standards as an example here. Now, this is just a few of what the standards in this particular unit might be. But you can get a picture of how students are getting their basic algorithms. They're working on accomplishing tasks with programming languages, whether they are unplugged activities or they're simple robots. And they're working to understand how their program is successful. They're starting to understand how debugging works. So even with a really simple technology, even unplugged, those foundational skills can be introduced at this grade level. With our upper elementary students, we can start to talk a little bit more about the transmission of data and the interplay between hardware and software. And at the same time, we can introduce a block program where students are getting to practice some of those coding skills, manipulate a little bit of data, but they're still leaning heavily on that structure of block coding. So they're understanding how they can use variables, they're understanding how these different commands can store data and how they see that data replicated in different ways depending on the programs that they build. They're working collaboratively to think a little bit more about what a robot can do. And they're also having a little bit more practice in testing and debugging to make sure that it meets goals in particular that aren't just about getting a robot to the cheese as it was in our K through second grade, but maybe we want to have a robot navigate a maze, or we want to program a dance. And so we're aligning that with a little bit more of our own goals that aren't as clear. And so we're engaging in a sort of digital engineering design process of returning and testing over and over again. At the middle school level, we do want our students to be rooting all of these skills in problem solving. We want students to take a little bit of a wider lens on how robots fit into our world and what potential changes to the ways we live and work can take place as a result of this technology. So we may have a little bit more of practical problem solving with these technologies, but we're also having a new approach to our coding and our programs. Can they be more autonomous? Can they be more interactive with the environment in the way that we've written this program, as opposed to waiting for user input? So we're thinking a little bit more about how we can manipulate our own coding to create something more autonomous. And students are also engaging in a lot of critical thinking and collaboration with their classmates, incorporating feedback from their team members whenever they're working together to debug a program. They're thinking a little bit more about accessibility in the way that they are refining. They're taking that feedback to think about efficiency. These are not as uh, black and white kind of answers around whether it is effective or not. Did it get to the cheese? Did it navigate the maze? When we're thinking more about, was this the most efficient it could be? And so students are getting a little bit more of those real world skills in using user feedback, real world constraints, and thinking critically about their programs. And our high school students, of course, we want to be thinking about the real world application of these skills in specific industries. We're taking that lens back a little bit further, not just about problem solving or working in teams, but specifically about the kinds of skills we see showing up in manufacturing as it relates to robotics. So with a different approach with a single board computer like a microbit, we're able to create autonomous processes that simulate those kinds of environments. So for example, this program culminates in students creating an autonomous sorting mechanism using conveyor belts, color sensors, sorting wands, and the microbit. So they're getting to see the kinds of skills and applications that they'll be looking for in careers in robotics. But we're also using more sophisticated languages. So students may be using Python, JavaScript, and moving away from those block-based programming that gave them more of a foundation into the kinds of skills that will be meaningful outside of school. Again, grab just a couple of those computer science standards just as a picture of what this one particular pathway can provide. Now, when we think about a NextWave STEM course, any one of those boxes on the course chart I showed you, they're going to include course guides, teachers' guides, and lesson plans so that your educators, once they've got those endorsements especially, can be really successful leaders of facilitating these lessons. That's going to include presentations that students are following along with throughout the course. All of their examples of code, their instructions, their objectives, are already provided, as well as worksheets and answer keys. So where students are keeping artifacts of their learning, organizing their thinking, or maybe we're using them as a more formative assessment. We also have summative assessments, especially if you're looking to take your CS program to the next level. And these are going to be grade-bearing classes. We're providing those kinds of assessments as well to make sure that you're able to measure your students' learning. When we bring computer science and STEM into the school day and we really say that we are taking it as seriously as we want to, then we can kind of have those assessments and represent those classes with the same weight that we give other core subjects because we want to reinforce the importance of these skills in the 21st century. And then we're also going to provide scope and sequence documents that outline exactly how every one of those lesson objectives aligns to computer science standards in Iowa. And those are explicit lesson by lesson objectives to see how those standard alignments are found across all the different computer science standards, whether it's algorithms and programming or networks in the internet concepts or the impacts of computing, more of a broader lens on the social and cultural impact. Those are represented as well. All of this content is hosted on our learning management system for teachers to access the full year of their access. So this is also going to include professional development resources. These are videos, presentations, self-paced activities for educators to engage with so that they have the background knowledge and the breakdown of lesson activities throughout each of these courses. And all of our student-facing resources are available in English and Spanish. So when we are supporting our students who speak Spanish in the classroom in a dual language setting or Spanish at home, we have resources to make sure that all students are getting access to this content. Now, what you can expect from a NextWave STEM course is something hands-on. Like I said at the very beginning, we don't want our students to be passive users of these technologies. We want them to be creators. In our AI literacy course, they're not just understanding what AI is and how to use it. They're building AI tools of their own. They're integrating simple models that they have taught and trained into chatbots that they have built. They're using their own design skills to 3D print a solution to a problem. So the very most important element of NextWave STEM, the NextWave STEM experience is something hands-on. They're also highly engaging. Our students have, our lessons always follow this 5E lesson plan. So we're starting with an engage. We are spending some time exploring without a lot of teacher prescription just yet so that students can develop their own ideas, their own questions. We are coming back together to explain what we've just noticed, whether it's a phenomenon or a pattern or a new tool or a technology. And then we're going to elaborate by putting that knowledge towards a new problem, a new project, self-expression, a new challenge. And then we're going to come back together for and evaluate whether we met those learning goals that we set at the beginning of our day, whether we have met the objectives that we set for our course. And this is not only the best practice for STEM because it builds that student inquiry, it's also highly engaging because students have so many opportunities to engage with and interact with the technology in different environments. And ease of implementation is something that NextWave STEM is built on as well, because we don't want schools to have a resource that is not useful to them. Too often we see schools and districts who have robots that they got through some funding opportunity years ago, and the educator who knew how to use them has moved on, or we never really had a curriculum, and so the lift on our educators to plan for it was too much. That's part of the reason that we exist, is to prevent that kind of a situation from happening. So we want our programs to be easy to implement. We do everything that we can to make sure that it's a useful skill, a useful tool for your teachers. That's going to mean those professional development resources, which include not just the background knowledge, but the breakdown of lesson activities. They're self-paced so that you can come back to them. It's not about 1 7-hour PD in August that you're trying to remember in March. You have access to all of these resources all the time. We're thinking through how we can be more supportive in the classroom, what kinds of additional resources like the classroom management tips or the student-facing drone checklists we can provide to make sure your implementation is seamless and replicable and sustainable year after year. and also up to date. So we understand, even with this computer science endorsement, educators have a lot on their plate. They cannot stay on the cutting edge of these technologies that are developing so rapidly. Even our conversation around AI, as a culture, the way that that has evolved over the last year, 6 months, we're really picking up pace on a lot of these technologies. And so our job is to stay on top of those, and to really stay on the cutting edge of these emerging technologies and what's coming up, and to provide educators with the resources to bring them into the classroom. So that means our courses are constantly getting updates, whether it's additional materials as technology evolves, or bringing up to date something that has changed in one of these technologies, a new equipment. If we have the availability of models that are more adept in the classroom and better for student impact or have more capabilities. This also means that we're helping students to understand the kinds of tools that are around them. So they're training their own models to understand how AI works, and they can use those technologies more effectively, more critically, when they understand what's happening behind the scenes. Ultimately, as an educator myself, I know this is the bottom line for resource quality. How do those standards show up in our lessons? How do they show up in our students' learning? How are we measuring our students' success? And how will we know when a program is successful? Our content is aligned to national computer science standards and science standards. And so that also includes the Iowa computer science and technology standards. In addition, because we know, especially at the elementary level, that instructional time is precious and STEM and computer science time cannot always be protected in its own right, we also highlight those ELA and math skills that are also being developed over the course of these courses. And so we know that classroom educators can make the most of the time that they do have. If it is going to have a little bit of ELA connection or a little bit of math, we know that our students are getting the most out of that time. That's also going to highlight 21st century skills. So the kinds of skills we want our students to have, but maybe a little bit hard to carve out in the school day, things like collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, all of that is represented as well. Now, whether you are thinking about the endorsements right now, or you're thinking ahead to the Professional Development Fund in the fall, or any other potential grant sources of funding and resources, we want to help make that happen for you. We do have sample language on our site to help reduce the lift on those who are completing these applications, to describe NextWave STEM in particular and the value of impactful STEM and computer science teaching. We want those resources to get to you as soon as possible, and to impact your students as easily as possible. So we've provided some language to help make your application successful and competitive for the incentive fund here in Iowa, or other sources of funding that you may need. I want to leave you also with one last look at that course chart. Again, every one of these boxes is a 15 lesson course with all of the resources, including professional development, that we've reviewed. A comprehensive computer science program, especially if students are getting access to computer science 3 times a week or more, would be made up of multiple courses along their grade band to make sure that they're getting something that really encapsulates not just one application of computer science. We want students to see how these skills transfer across different applications and passions. A single student with a lot of experience and enthusiasm for computer science can be successful in robotics, in drones, in AI literacy, in game design, in 3D technology, and designing new solutions to promote sustainability and new innovations. All of this plays into the same skill set that students are building on, so that we can help see students realize careers that follow their passions with these skills, not as a prescription of take these skills and enter one kind of career. And you can see as well, there's a lot of different courses that may have immediate implementation, some also that may need some additional hardware, so we can help work with you as well if you're thinking about securing additional equipment in the fall under that professional development fund. Like I said, I really hope that we can help partner with you if you are thinking through some of the challenges that are coming to mind right now or have been barriers in the past, whether that's kept you from utilizing the Iowa Incentive Fund or STEM and computer science in general. I hope that we'll have a chance to work with you. There's nothing more that I love than really getting in the weeds with schools and teachers to think through program design, student goals. We can help connect schools and districts with other sources of funding as well as the incentive fund, and help think through what has been a barrier to instruction in computer science in your districts. If you have any questions, I will stick around for a couple of minutes. You can toss them into the chat or come right off of mute to ask, whether it's about the Computer Science Fund, about STEM and computer science instruction in general, or about NextWave STEM's resources. We do provide samples for all of our content, all of those courses that we just looked at. They are available on our site, and I highly recommend you check them out because they are a really strong resource to make sure your students are getting consistent, engaging STEM experiences. So thank you all so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. I hope you're excited to complete your application for endorsements to increase your capacity and to really ignite a love for computer science in the teachers in your buildings as well as the students. So I'll stick around for a couple more minutes to answer questions, but I thank you so much for your time.